right, Teege. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here and looking forward to this conversation.
And I think you are my first podcast guest that deals with admissions.
Yes, I think that's right.
And I think it's going to be a very popular episode.
People love admissions, and I can't decide if they love admissions as it is or admissions as they think it is. Either way, they love to talk about it. Pro or con, good or bad, whether it's trashing us for what we do or praising us for how we do it, whatever. It's always a hot topic. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think admissions is the center of colleges. It's a student's a lot of times, their first touch, their first interaction with someone on campus. So it's such an important part of the student journey. But before we dive into that, tell me a little
Yeah.
bit about yourself, your background, your book. Give us
Yes.
a rundown.
Oh, the book. Well, my name is Teege Mettille. I currently am the Director of Enrollment Success at Enroll, which is an ed tech company that helps admissions offices connect students to counselors. But my background is entirely college admissions. I went to school as a first generation college student. Believe me, Cheryl, when I tell you I was not tracked for college in high school, when I went to some of the rep visits, I remember once clearly the guidance secretary saying, "Teacher, are you really thinking about college, or are you just trying to get out of class?" Right? Because nobody, nobody saw me as college bound. Um, my college experience was life changing, as I think it is for everybody. And I am so grateful for the opportunities I had and took advantage of at UW Whitewater here in Wisconsin. And so when I had the opportunity to jump over to the admissions world and help students who needed that nudge, that needed that boost, that needed someone to help them see the potential they maybe don't see in themselves yet, jumped at the chance. And then I've been admissions counselor, director, dean, vice president of enrollment, financial aid, et cetera, the whole 9 yards before coming over here. And now I'm in a position where I've written this book, The Admissions Counselor Malaise, which I think we're going to talk about, all about staff morale in college admissions. And I co-host the Admissions Director's Lunchcast, a thrilling podcast for about 500 people in the country. It's targeted for admissions directors. So if that's you, check it out. But it really digs into very specific, tangible, tactical issues related to the admissions counseling process.
Great. I love that title, the admissions counselor malaise. I like to
Yes.
call it the cranky admission counselor. What led you to write the book and in particular focus on
Admissions
morale?
counselors.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, everywhere coming out of the pandemic, morale had been a problem. Something different is happening in admissions, and I think colleges generally, but pretty specific to admissions. And at the NACAT conference in 2023 in Baltimore, I went to a session where a liberal arts institution, I won't name it, but you've heard of it. If you're listening to this podcast, you've heard of this college. And it was the dean and the vice president of enrollment. They gave a presentation on all the changes they made to improve morale. They listened to the counselors, they surveyed them, they interviewed them, they talked to them. They increased staffing, they lowered application volume, they increased work from home, right? Everything you would want. It was a really expensive proposition. They had to get support from the cabinet. And at the end of the year, staff turnover continued, morale went down, and enrollment went down. Okay.
Ah,
And I left feeling like I was really spinning on this, like, what is it? And this is what I got stuck on. What is it about this problem that when you ask admissions counselors plainly, what do you need? And they tell you honestly, it's not what they need. When I touched back to my own college experience, Cheryl, I was a women's studies major, which let me tell you, as a first generation student, to call home and say, I'm going to change from pre-law to women's studies is quite a conversation. um,
especially for a kid who was never going to go to college.
correct. But I was assigned, I should say, when I was in college, I was assigned the book The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan. I read it for the first time recently. Maybe should have read it when assigned, but that's a whole
I
nother
was
story.
like, wait a second, let's back up.
But the feminine mystique, if you're familiar with it, it needs no introduction. But if you're not, for your listeners, it was a book. It was published in 1963, and it was all about the plight of suburban housewives in the 1950s, who had every modern convenience. They had an idyllic life, the house in the suburbs, the husband, the children, the best CRM, or mop or whatever tools they needed, right? And yet something was missing. And they couldn't fix it because they couldn't name it because they wouldn't talk about it.
Mm.
So Betty Friedan referred to that as the problem that has no name. And it hit me that the admissions counselors, we have a problem and it has no name. Nobody's kind of pinning it correctly. We've all focused on the pandemic. And what I trace through in the book is actually over the course of a generation, colleges and universities have become much more corporatized, much more revenue driven, and the mission and the value and the meaning has been zapped out. The joy has been zapped out of the work of admissions counseling. And that's at the core of what's leading to the malaise. That's the argument I make in the book.
Wow. I mean, it really can apply to anybody that's working almost in any industry. I mean, you can have the salary, you can have the
Yep.
lifestyle, but if there's not meaning behind your work, then it's hard to find love for it and continue to have love for it.
I agree so much. And I mean, this is why, right? I watched a show, don't laugh at me. Remember TLC had this period of time where they went through everything was a reality show. They were just throwing things against the wall. And there was
Right.
one segment, a reality show about parking enforcers. Okay.
Okay.
This will connect in a second. I think it was like 20, almost 20 years ago. But I remember an interview with a person, her job was just driving around giving out parking tickets on the day they were supposed to be cleaning the streets with a street sweeper. And she was giving out tickets and she explained to camera that this is making the lives better for people in the city because you can't park here because we can't clean the streets. And if the streets aren't clean, and blah, 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 blah. All that to say, I think the sense of purpose is so important to everyone that we will go through some pretty extreme rationalizations to get there. And I think that parking enforcer did. With admissions counselors and college personnel specifically, I think the added component is there's a degree of gaslighting in that when we bring folks in, what we talk about when we hire admissions counselors, I'll speak to that specifically because that's what I can do. When I bring an admissions counselor in, when I hired them, I did not say, great news, you're going to come here, you're going to spend a third of your time in spreadsheets and data analysis, and you're going to, if all goes well, have a modest impact on the net tuition revenue for a regional institution. That's not it. I tell stories of like, you're going to make a difference. You're going to impact students. And yes, you're going to be paid less than you should. The hours suck. The work is difficult. It's a lot of rejection to you, not from you. But you're going to feel the impact you're making. And what I contend, and I kind of lay out over time in the book, the way we've increased the applications per counselor over a generation, counselors can't feel the impact of their work because they're too watered down. And so that's where the joy has come. And we still bring them in. And here's the thing, colleges and universities, we could bring in different people to be admissions counselors. We could look for people that will be motivated by net tuition revenue. We could post the jobs as sales rep. We could do that, but we won't because of two things. Colleges will not pay those people what they would expect.
Right.
And we don't want people who are not mission driven in these roles.
Right. I mean, and that's really the difference between higher education as a nonprofit institution versus a for-profit. I mean, if you do work with admission counselors for for-profits, I mean, they are looking at the money, looking at their numbers. I mean, we've done secret shopping for for-profit institutions where we just put an inquiry into the website and we're all of a sudden just like bombarded, you know.
I did that with my counseling team one year this was when I was a dean of admissions and had every admissions counselor before our mid-year retreat. Here's a hot tip for everybody, actually. I had them go sign up as an inquiry for one of our competitor schools and just some other random school
Right.
and do a presentation at the retreat. And one of the counselors, I just won't forget, she just played all the voicemails she got in 1 week from the
Yeah.
for-profit college. And it was a lot and friendly, energetic, bubbly person that did not seem like they were working a call list that they didn't want to. They were happy to be reaching out to the student. It's a very different experience, and I can see how a lot of people are taken in by them.
Now, I think I love the focus of your book because all the admissions that I have worked, all the admissions counselors I have worked with in my own career have been in the position a long time and were very cranky. And I just
Yeah.
thought they were cranky people. Like I had never come at it at this other lens. Like they're stressed out. They got into the career because they want to work with students. And now a lot of their work is actually probably taking them away from working one-on-one with students, right?
Mhm.
They have this burden of telling people that they're not accepted or they've done something wrong or they filled out paperwork wrong or they have to go back and
Mhm.
do something. So I'm sure that they get a lot of angry clients, right? And I hadn't ever really thought about the institution taking on not the burden, but taking on morale in order to improve the service that students get. I think it's such a great thing that you've put your finger on.
Thank you for saying that. You know, with EnrollML, that's the company I work for. Our software, this is not the EnrollML pitch, but at the core of it, we identify based on student behaviors which students are ready to engage with a counselor. Okay, so counselors are able to stop the mindless calling list and focus in on students who are engaged with the institution. And when we rolled it out, what the director I was working with there, the feedback was staff morale has skyrocketed. Right. And of course, we were like, you need to do a webinar for us, right? Like, let's put that out there. So if anyone wants to read, I can show it to you. But it shows, and that was part of kind of what unlocked this for me, is
Right.
admissions counselors want to work with students, but there's too many students. I just trained an admissions counselor on our software earlier this week. And I asked her, what are you excited about for this job? She's brand new to the role. And she said, I am excited to walk alongside students through this process. And then I looked at her dashboard and I said, you've got 500 applicants. That's too much walking, right? We're going to have to narrow it down. And admissions counselors, we're very focused. And I say we, I think of myself this way. We're very focused on fairness, equity. We want to treat all students equally. And so at a for-profit institution, they might be inclined to only focus on those that are most likely to come through. On the not-for-profit end, we want to treat everybody equally. So what we've ended up doing is just every year by 5 to 10%, which is the application volume growth every year, we've been watering down our relationships with students to the point that they're virtually, with some exceptions, they're not particularly deep, and counselors don't feel the work that they're doing.
Now, why is there been such a growth? I mean, we hear everywhere like college going down, it's decreasing,
Yes.
there's less students. So why are the admissions people feeling such a growth in what they do?
Well, there's two things happening at once. One is in the interest of increasing access to our institutions. Colleges have been making the application process frictionless. They've been reducing the application fee, test scores, self-report your transcripts if you want, no essay required, right? They've been making it easier and easier. And that's with good intentions. Students who would have been kept out by those barriers are now able to get in. Where we miss the mark is when we don't have the staffing levels to match the volume increase and support students. We end up admitting students who need counseling and guidance to know how to make it work, but we don't have anyone who can give it to them. So I think we're kind of self-defeating our own purpose. The other thing, and the other reason, and this answers your question directly, Cheryl, at the core of it, students are applying to more colleges every year. On average, it's about 10 to 12 now, which means, yes, we do deny some students, but more often than not, students are denying us because if they apply to 10, they get admitted to 8, they can only go to 1, right? And so the average yield rate is, don't quote me on this, I don't have exact statistics, but it's somewhere between 10 and 15% for the typical institution is the yield rate, the number of students who enroll after getting admitted.
So, I mean, institutions then have like a reason to go out and get even more applicants because
Got it.
their yield rate is decreasing, right? But they're not
Correct.
hiring probably admissions counselors to deal with the increase in applications.
You got it. Because the enrollment numbers aren't increasing, right? Just the
Right.
application volume. And I get it, Cheryl. I've sent out the press release of like more applications than ever before. And
Right.
those press releases
Oh,
are
yeah.
flying around right now. You can go see them on LinkedIn. They are rarely are they linked to a press release in May saying more students than ever before. We don't often hear that, right? Because students are applying to more colleges. It's not a big deal to have more applications than ever before.
This is so interesting from a marketing perspective, and that's, where I'm coming from.
Mhm.
Is marketing loves more applications. I mean,
Yes.
that's what we got to do is we got to bring in the applications. And then when enrollment doesn't go up, who
Yep.
do we blame? Can't blame marketing because our job is
Yep.
applications,
Yeah, they
right?
blame us. Yeah. What and the challenge is, and you know this from marketing, right? Like, it's not just can you get a lead, can you qualify that lead? And the
Yes,
admissions counselors, that business concept is not intuitive to admissions counselors. It's not something they're likely to do because if I were as an admissions director to say, these students over here, whatever group they are very unlikely to enroll, don't spend your time with them. And I've delivered that message. And what I thought would be met with, oh, thank goodness, this is a more manageable workload, was met with skepticism and why? Why are you telling me to ignore those students? Is it because of money? Is it because they're not the right type of students? Blah, 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 blah. And it took me a while to realize we need to find a way to show counselors, not that you're ignoring students, but that you're respecting them enough when they are telling you clear as day, they're not interested in you. If you call them, they're going to hang up on you, or they're going to
right.
swear at you, or they're going to say, I never applied to your institution. And if you can get the students, as I said to that counselor, who want someone, need someone to walk alongside them, you'll have a much better experience and you'll feel the impact of your work.
Well, I want to ask you about how you can qualify a lead, but before we do that, we're going to take a really quick break and hear from our sponsor.
How do higher education decision makers find the right solution when technology evolves at light speed? Well, we usually start with our network. EdTech Connect is the network that's democratizing the higher ed technology conversation. EdTech Connect is free, so anyone with a .edu email address can sign up and list the software and services they use in their role at their school. Once you're in, you can find out what solutions similar schools are doing all over the country. Whether you're looking to find the hot new AI tool, or maybe learn options you have to upgrade your campus search engine, or even get to your short list of marketing solution vendors, EdTech Connect is the place to go. So visit edtechconnect.com and set up your free profile to get a pulse for what's happening with higher ed technology today.
All right, we're back from our break. And beforehand, we were talking about this colleges and universities creating this frictionless application, which has made more students apply than ever before, which has not resulted in growing enrollments, but has made our admissions colleagues overwhelmed and burdened, right? So,
Yes.
right, us marketers are over here cheering that we have great
Yep.
application numbers, and the admission people are like, can you please stop already? Can you please stop? And I know, especially working with our community college clients, we've done some secret shopping experiments. College president has come in and said, gosh, our applications are up 25%, but we're not converting into enrollments. What's going on? Can you shop admissions and see your customer service? And I'd say 9 times out of 10, the customer service is horrible. I mean, we had one school where we called 16 times and left 16 voicemails and never got a call back from admissions. And of course, then, the poor admissions people, I actually feel, now that I've talked to you, I actually feel bad, bad about this. It's not that they don't want to call back. It's that they're dealing with hundreds, if not thousands of students. They're completely overwhelmed, especially during these key enrollment periods. So I think helping them know the outreach they need to do, what makes a student more likely to pick up the phone, who they need to be calling would be really helpful. So do you have tools for that or
Oh,
suggestions?
oh, indeed we do. But I want to just take a step back to any of my colleagues from the not-for-profit, especially small liberal arts colleges. That story, Cheryl, that you just said, they didn't call back, that would not have happened at Western Governors, Southern New Hampshire,
Oh
or
no.
any of the for-profits. They would have been on the phone immediately.
Like they wouldn't have even let it go to voicemail. I know.
Correct, correct. Meanwhile, I will be mindful not to give any hint of the institution, but there was a large public institution that I am aware of that, at least for a while, all of their counselors were told to put an out of office away message on their email for the fall, all of the fall, to so that nobody expected a reply back because whatever. You know,
Right.
what works? I just want to talk about the FAFSAs a little bit. This will make sense.
Right.
FAFSA, almost every admissions director you talk to, Cheryl, they will tell you Our students don't enroll without the FAFSA. Therefore, the FAFSA is one of the most important indicators, which is backwards. Anyone listening who's thinking that, you're thinking about it wrong, and we can take that offline if you would like, because almost all of your students that submit the FAFSA still don't enroll as well. But whatever, take that aside. 10 years ago and prior, when we would get a FAFSA submitted from a student to our institution, it would not only give us the student data and their financial information and their EFC, it would tell us where they listed us on the 10 slots they had to put a college in, whether we were first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Students were never told to prioritize us. They just did. And what we found, and this is not unique to us, but at my institution, if we were listed first, we would enroll 60 to 70% of them.
Wow.
If we were listed second, that would be cut roughly in half. If we were listed third, in half again, and then it just trailed off to virtually nothing. If we came in 8th, 9th, 10th, none of those students are coming. I don't know why they listed us on the FAFSA. I don't know why they applied, but they're not into us, okay? A number of colleges.
No, so hold on, let's pause right there because I didn't even know you could get that information. Like, who gets that information? Is it still
Well, you can't anymore because
okay. I was like, this is great. I want this information.
Yes, well, because
Okay.
a couple colleges now, what most of us did, the vast majority of us used it to identify who needs attention.
Right.
Some colleges said, "Oh, if you listed us first, you don't need as much financial aid to come," and so, which is an inappropriate, unethical use of that information, and the Department of Ed got wind of it and took it away from us.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, but I say that because anyone who's been in admissions, at least for 10 years or more, will remember that time and will know we now don't have it. So now we're back to a position of just saying FAFSA yes or no. And we're treating all FAFSAs the same. But we know from our own lived experience in this lifetime, like in this professional lifetime, that that's not the case. There are many FAFSAs that are not serious, not interested. And the same is true for applications and admits and on-campus visits. Okay, but because we can't tell the difference, we're just treating all FAFSAs the same. We're treating all visits the same, all applicants the same. What at EnrollML, what we do, right, and this is will answer your question. We plug into an institution's CRM, we pull all the data out, and we use artificial intelligence and a machine learning engine to identify the behaviors and signals of students who end up enrolling. Now, the type of, and so then we measure all current applicants against that to drive counselors to the right students, or the students, you know, as that counselor said earlier this week, they want someone to walk alongside them. So the things that come up, which was your specific question, Cheryl, the things that come up are less about did they do this or that. It's not about did they submit, did they apply, did they visit. The things that come up the most are what is the time space between when they applied and when they visited, or how long did it take them to get admitted, or when did they submit the FAFSA, not just did they submit the FAFSA. And we always find, not always, I should say, every institution is unique, but we so often find kind of ideal time windows. With some institutions, I can tell you, if they apply and are not admitted within 72 days, they're not coming. Don't cancel them, don't deny them. But if they wanted to come, they would have gone through the admissions process, right? Similar things with visit dates, FAFSAs, on-campus orientation, et cetera. So the first trick I would say is don't just measure two events, measure the time window between them. The other thing, and this is not going to be a surprise, but it's the incoming messages from students. Not just are you emailing them, but are they emailing you? Are they writing back? Or can you talk about who they are and what is interesting, or what matters to them? And if so, you're probably in a good spot with them.
Gosh, it's so fascinating. I love this. And I especially love like that you've been able to quantify the time. You know, I don't know of any of my clients who have done the work to see how long in between certain events it's taken students before they've become a student. I know very few of our institutions have done that type of work.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting and a pretty simple way, I would think, for an institution to see, like, you know, to put priority on who they need to get support to.
There's a simple way to get kind of a thumbnail version of it.
Right.
It is our data science team that kind of drills down to the like 72 days, right? When I was an admissions director, I would measure ping data, website traffic, right? We call it ping for our CRM slate. And one of the things I would do to break students in or out of our contact list was, have they been on more than 10 pages in the website in the last 30 days? Okay.
Okay.
Now, why did I pick 10? I have no idea, Cheryl. I really have I don't know if 10 was right. Maybe it was 3. Maybe it
Yeah.
was 13. Maybe in February it was different than April. And that's the type of thing our data science team gets to and really gets to precision. But admissions leaders right now, without those tools, this is a place to get started, right? Add that when you're doing your end of the year or your summer analysis and looking at the power of the FAFSA or the high school visit or whatever. Fine, do all that. Roll these in and see what that starts to tell you. It won't be as precise. It will not be perfect, but it's a really good place to go.
So you've given one great example of how you use AI in
Yeah.
admissions. Are there other ways that AI has been being used to make jobs easier or better?
Oh my goodness, Cheryl. Yes. Okay. So I mean, my favorite is using AI to empower admissions counselors to connect with the right students because the work of admissions is so important to me. The morale of our profession really matters. So, that's why I point to that. Things that have come up a lot currently. There's the basic things like AI is reading transcripts now. To me, that's boring. Whatever, great, but that saves a lot of time.
Yeah.
AI is processing applications, fine. We have this weird thing where AI is reviewing essays that are often written by a different AI, and so like that seems weird to me. That's fine. But the other big thing, and I have nothing to do with it, but I want to tell you about it because it was a big breakthrough moment, I think. There's a company called College Vine they're doing some great work, but specifically they have an AI recruiter that communicates with students by email, by text, and by phone,
Okay.
um, and operates the admissions process. So students earlier in the funnel, especially at the search phase, this is where I think that is the best case for it, Cheryl. Students who are interested in a college or open to it, but not ready to talk to a human. College Vine reports that their survey data says they are eager to talk to they asked me not to say robot, but to an artificial intelligence recruiter as opposed to a human because they don't have to worry about feeling stupid or saying the wrong thing. And the results are pretty impressive. And anyone listening, if you want to check this out, just search for College Vine AI recruiter. You can type in your name and the AI recruiter will give you a call and like you can see what the experience is like. It's
It's
shocking.
called College Find, like Find, like I'm finding something, or Vine,
Vine, like what you get
VINE.
before wine. Yeah, Vine. Yeah.
Oh. Okay, good. I'm gonna do that. I
Check
mean,
it
I
out.
have a 16-year-old. Actually, tonight I have
Yeah.
to go to a college night at his high school. So
Good. Good.
this conversation has me like fired up right now for college night.
Be so kind to those admissions
I
counselors.
am
They
gonna be
are
so much
tired.
nicer to them now.
Yeah.
I never, and you're so passionate and enthusiastic. I just love the energy that you bring to this conversation. And because you think of your education and you love your faculty, like you
Yep.
love your career counselor, your guidance counselor. Like the poor admissions people, they don't ever get any love. I mean, they're probably not getting thank you letters and connections
Now,
on LinkedIn.
true, but we do get essentially an unending supply of free Panera during the fall. So like there's trade-offs. There's trade-offs.
Well, before we wrap up our conversation, a lot of our podcast listeners are college presidents. So I would love
Yes.
if you had some advice to them, because I'm sure if they have a more happy, more productive admissions
Yes.
department, the entire institution is going to benefit. So what advice could you give to them?
Yes, yes, yes. College presidents or anyone kind of in a leadership role. Um, your admissions counselors are not motivated by enrollment targets. They're just not. But if you ask your enrollment VP, are they motivated by the targets? They will say yes, because then they will go ask the director who will say yes, who will ask the counselors who will say yes, but they're not. They're motivated not by hitting numbers, but by the stories, by the lives they're impacting. So, a college president, if you want to make a positive impact in the enrollment office, it's not saying I'll call students. That's not helpful because the enrollment VP is only going to give you the students who are most excited to come already. Okay. If you want to make a positive impact on the enrollment division after you've done the product stuff and made sure the programs are fit, blah, 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 just walk through the admissions office and don't ask about numbers, ask about students. Say, tell me about a student you're really excited about. Who am I going to love to meet next year? Show them that you care about
I
who
love
you're
that.
recruiting. It will energize them. They're motivated by the students they work with. And you can motivate them to hit numbers by showing that you recognize that.
I mean, at the end of the day, this is why I got into higher education marketing is I wanted to bring students to college. Like my
Yes.
college experience was amazing. I loved marketing. I'm like, what a perfect thing to market is this amazing time in your life where you grow
Yeah.
so much as a human being. And it's so easy to lose sight of that when you are just getting hounded with numbers and calls and
Yes.
bureaucracy. So,
Yeah. Cheryl,
so
where did you go to college? Where you said it was an amazing experience. Give them a shout out.
yes, I went to UC Santa Barbara for my
Ah,
undergrad,
sounds great.
right? And then I went to Cal State Chico for my graduate. Yeah.
I almost spent a year at Cal State Chico in an RA exchange, but I ran for student government president and had to stay behind at Whitewater. But maybe we would have
Because
ran
did
into
you
each other.
win? That's why you stayed behind?
That is a much longer story. I got the most votes, but did not win the role. So that's a whole nother story. I won by 8.
Oh my gosh. Wow. No recount?
No recount. It's too long of a story and irrelevant. But I love Cal State Chico too. I was excited. I mean, just I don't know if it's still true, at least at the time, what I understood, a very significant deaf population as well, and just a different approach to student services and the student body. I was excited to be a part of it, but ultimately didn't get to do it.
Yeah. Well, you'll have to come out and walk Bidwell Park one day and float down the Sacramento River and do all the great things that we did at Chico State.
It's a
I
deal.
loved it. Well, I know that you do speaking engagements. You have
I
your
do.
book. If people want to connect with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. Yeah, I do speaking engagements, usually admissions offices, right, or admissions conferences, but it's pretty basic. Teege.Mettille at enrollml.com would be the way to go. Happy to talk about the data science work, the admissions counselor morale, anything else related to admissions. Happy to help.
Well, I really think that your take on morale, it goes way beyond the admissions office. Yeah,
That's
as higher education becomes more and more of a business,
mhm.
um, I see my clients suffering from the same problems you're bringing up with admissions. So I would encourage listeners who are want to improve morale on their campus to pick up your book, to listen to your podcast, and go to one of your webinars. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you.